young lad been shot.
Okay, how old is he, please?
He's 11. He's on my football team. Oh, my God. Blood everywhere.
Is he leaving?
No, he's not. Someone's just said they think he's dead.
On the 22nd of August 2007, 11-year-old Rhys Jones was gunned down on his way home from football practice.
Because he was so young, 11. I mean, 11, no age.
It was a murder that shocked the nation.
I actually caught Rhys fall. I seen him fall.
People were working on him with the CPR and stuff like that. We knew that the chances of actually reviving him were sort of like ebbing away.
There must have been a pool of blood around his head, like that.
Rhys was caught in the crossfire of a gang war being waged on the streets of Liverpool.
They've got no fear of the law, most of these kids, no fear of the law.
And he paid with his life.
He was just an innocent boy, and he was shot.
Sean Mercer was just 16 when he committed this horrific murder that left a family and community devastated.
I was a 16-year-old kid, done that.
If you've got a gun and you're firing it, you're going to know that it is capable of killing somebody.
This is a young man who wants it now. He wants that status now, in this moment. And the way that he can do that is to carry a gun and be willing, should the need arise, to use the gun.
Your mind just doesn't want to take it in. Just doesn't sort of like accept it, you know, what they're telling you.
Until you've witnessed it or been there, you can't imagine how it is. Because I couldn't, I know I couldn't.
"11-year-old Rhys Jones lived with his mum, dad and older brother in the northeast of Liverpool, in Croxteth, a leafy area of town on a new-built housing estate.
It was a really nice area. We were never ever worried about going out the door. We never ever worried about getting broken into or anything like that. We felt it was a reasonably safe environment.
Rhys was the baby of the family.
He loved his mum. Rhys used to make out he was such a big boy, but he still loved a cuddle off her. Rhys was just a little live wire, always into things, always wants to be outside, always kicking a football, even when he was in his thing that he used to scoot around the floor. He used to have a ball at his feet or something at his feet that he'd be kicking.
Rhys's favourite team was Everton.
He lived and breathed around football. He used to collect stickers, he used to collect all kinds of memorabilia from Everton. We started off just going to an odd few games together as a family, and then we progressed to being season ticket holders, just me and the two lads, so it would be sort of like just me and the two lads going to the game.
When local coach Steve Gagan started a kids' football team just round the corner, Furtree FC, Rhys signed up immediately and became a star player. His character shone through.
You know, at a training session, he'd cause mayhem. I'd have to tell him off loads of times, because he was dead mischievous, but in a good way, you know what I mean? So if the weather was bad and it was muddy and that, he'd start throwing mud balls at all the other kids in the middle of the session, you know, stuff like that.
While some kids were getting their kicks on the football field, there was a darker side to Croxteth. 16-year-old Sean Mercer was also a local boy, but he was in constant trouble with the police.
You know, he was stopped and searched 80 times by the police, and he'd been subject to an ASBO, and there was an incident at a local leisure centre where a security guard was threatened by him. I mean, he was just a kid, but he's threatening to set fire to somebody at a leisure centre, so he was pure terrifying for people in the community, and people were very scared of him.
He came from a family with a criminal history.
His father had a pretty bad reputation in the city. He was a former bouncer. You know, they were just a troubled family.
Sean Mercer, when he was a young man, was brought up by parents who had been involved in crime. And that undoubtedly has an impact in terms of the things that he believes to be normal, the things that he believes to be permissible, his views about the law, his views about how to manage his relationship with school, with peers, and with others. So we have got a young man who's brought up in an environment which is going to suggest to him that crime is something that's perfectly acceptable.
And in addition to this, Mercer was involved in a local gang.
So the issue at the time in Liverpool was gangs. There would be groups of young lads. It tended to be people who were teenagers, really. There was problems with gangs at the time between Croxteth and Norris Green.
Croxteth and Norris Green were adjacent areas, and their two gangs, the Croxteth or Crocky Crew and the Strand Gang, also known as the Nogger Dogs, were involved in crime, dealing drugs and guns. Mercer was part of the Crocky Crew.
Norris Green and Croxteth butt onto each other, and there'd been a history between the two factions.
Over the previous 3 years, there'd been 17 gun-related incidents between the two gangs.
There had been things in the paper and things that had gone on in the past regarding tit-for-tat shootings and tit-for-tat, beating up and stuff like that, which you see in the paper, but it was never ever relevant to us because it just didn't seem to be anywhere near us. It seemed to be in a different parts of Croxteth, the old Croxteth.
I mean, there's always been gangs, hasn't there, wherever you've gone. I mean, I was in a gang when I was a kid, and it was like where you were from, that was your gang sort of thing. And there was gang fights, and there was no guns or knives. You didn't go out fearing someone's going to come up behind you and put a knife in your back.
It's gangs, but it's gangs with guns or access to guns, and it makes it so much more horrendous, really. Young kids carrying guns around and can fire them.
In the summer of 2007, tensions between the gangs were rising. Almost exactly 1 year before, a member of the Nogger Dogs had been gunned down and killed after visiting fellow gang members in prison. There were rumours the gang was looking for revenge.
They see themselves stuck in some kind of fantastic war that they've got against another gang in that local area, which is frankly meaningless in the greater scheme of things, but to them seems central to their culture and lives.
On the 22nd of August, Mercer heard the Nogger Dogs were on what he perceived to be his gang's territory. Enraged, he decided to strike first. He got hold of a gun, got on his bike, and set out, intending to kill. On Wednesday, 22nd of August, Rhys was getting ready for football practice. In a few short weeks, he'd be starting secondary school, but for now, Everton mad Rhys was looking forward to the first match of the season for the local team he played for, S03E01 FC. But it was a game he would never play in.
That night changed everything. The football season was due to start the following Sunday. So I'd organised a training session for the Wednesday evening.
Rhys's dad was in the house gearing up for his night shift as a Tesco manager in Southport.
The last time I saw him, he was sat on the edge of the couch. I was looking at him and I was thinking he needs a haircut any day soon because it was getting a bit long. So, and that was the last time I saw him, sort of like sat on the arm of the couch.
It was a warm summer's evening. People were drinking outside the Fir Tree pub, and Rhys walked the 10 minutes from his house round to the football pitch next to the pub car park. S03E01 FC team coach Steve Gagan took the practice session as usual.
We'd done a few little practice drills, passing, shooting, and then we'd mainly play five-a-side or whatever. So we finished it off with a penalty shootout, and that was it. I said, right, boys, take care, see you next Sunday. Started putting the stuff in the car. Rhys walked past me. I said, yeah, Rhys, I'll drop you off. He said, no, it's all right, I'll walk. I said, yeah, where? I'll drop you off. And anyway, he wouldn't. So I said, okay, then, I'll see you Sunday, don't be late.
What happened next would change all their lives forever.
I got in my car, reversed it, went to drive out, and my son Sean screamed. My son Sean heard the gunshots. I didn't hear nothing. Don't know why I never heard anything. As he screamed, I sort of jumped and he shouted Rhys's name. So I knew Rhys was over to me right, so I naturally looked out of the window to me right. And I actually caught Rhys fall. I seen him fall. I thought he'd stepped onto the tarmac and slipped on his football boots, you know, and gone back. That's what I thought. I jumped out the car. My son had got there seconds before me. And by the time I got there, Rhys was literally lying in a pool of blood.
The first person to reach Rhys was a bystander from the pub.
The girl got there just the seconds before I did. She was trying to administer some sort of first aid, and she's screaming to me, he's been shot. And I just went numb. If I'm honest, I didn't know what to do. I just seen Rhys lying there, and his eyes were open. Anyway, I phoned the police, phoned the ambulance.
There's a young lad been shot.
Okay, how old is he, please?
He's 11. He's on my football team. Oh my God, blood everywhere.
Is he breathing?
No, he's not. Someone's just said they think he's dead.
My son started running around, sort of hysterical. Is he going to be all right? You know, my son was only 11 at the time as well, same as Rhys. And I'm shouting to Sean, my son, he'll be all right, he's all right. My son Sean is shouting to me, he's looking at me, Dad, he's looking at me.
Rhys's mum and dad, Mel and Steve, were totally unaware of the tragedy unfolding in the pub car park just a few hundred yards from their home. Rhys's football coach couldn't find Mel's number, but knew someone who lived a few doors away from them.
I phoned Tony and I said to him, Tony, go round and get Mel. Do you need to get round to Mel's and get around here?
Rhys's dad, Steve, was driving to work.
I was on the M57, heading up towards Southport when Mel phoned me, just saying that Rhys had been shot and I needed to go home. And that was it. It was as simple as that, because the phone battery had died on her phone. So I tried to phone back, but I couldn't get an answer. She sounded distraught, absolutely, you know, in tears. You could hear it in her voice. So I just turned around and headed back home. It was very confusing because, you know, if someone says someone's been shot, is it with, you know, what have they been shot with? Is it a bow and arrow? Is it an air gun? Is it, you know, you never in a million years. So it's like, imagine that it's been a proper firearm that's been, you know, he's been shot with.
As Steve raced to get back to Croxteth, Rhys's mum Mel arrived at the car park.
She just jumped out the car and went straight to Rhys, knelt down next to him and held him in her arms. And she was just shouting, stay with me, Rhys. I can just remember her saying that, you know. Stay with me, Rhys. There must have been a pool of blood around his head, like that. The paramedics arrived, they were treating him on the floor, and then the ambulance arrived 20 minutes later.
News of a shooting in broad daylight outside a busy pub travelled like lightning.
I was aware of it because it was all over the news, and I was just really shocked because he was so young, 11. I mean, 11, no age.
Detective Superintendent Dave Kelly had just got home from work.
I received a call from a colleague at work saying that an 11-year-old boy had been shot in Croxteth. So because I was in charge of the major incident team, I decided to go up to the scene, which was outside the S03E01 public house in Croxteth. Mayhem, to put an expression on it. There was a lot of police there, there were a lot of public there. There was some tapes up, there was a tent up where Rhys had gone down on the car park.
Yeah, I made it to the S03E01 car park and it was just like chaos with, you know, the police holding people back. Lots and lots of people. And I just heard someone saying, no, that they've taken them off to hospital.
In the ambulance, the paramedics were desperately fighting to save Rhys's life. By the time Steve arrived at the hospital, Mel and Rhys were already there.
Mel was sort of like waiting for me outside the trauma room.
Rhys was surrounded by medics.
He was on the stretcher. He'd had all his kit cut off him. He had all kinds of tubes going in, and people were working on him with the CPR and stuff like that. There just seemed to be blood everywhere.
It was a desperate situation.
And then the doctor who was sort of like orchestrating what was going on was sort of like liaising with us, sort of telling us what they were doing and why they were doing it, and what was next if that didn't work. Sort of like they were saying like rub his feet, talk to him, have some sort of connection with him. But he just didn't seem to respond to anything. We knew that the chances of actually reviving him were sort of like ebbing away. You just wait, don't you, to see if there's any response from him, but there wasn't.
At 8:46 p.m, Rhys Jones died.
Your mind just doesn't want to take it in. Just doesn't sort of like accept that, what they're telling you.
Until you've witnessed it or been there, you can't imagine how it is. Because I couldn't, I know I couldn't. So to be in Mel and Steve's shoes, I couldn't even begin. I couldn't even begin to think.
Detective Chief Inspector Dave Kelly's first job was to go to the hospital to see the parents.
11-year-old boy. He was due to go to senior school in September. He got his uniform and stuff ready for him. And he's just taken out. The world had been ripped apart. Just ripped apart. And it was for me and the team to try and give them some answers and to bring the people who were responsible to justice. But they're too lovely. Sorry.
The news of 11-year-old Rhys's murder reverberated around a country already sickened by a wave of gang-related violence.
It was a huge story. I would say it was one of the biggest stories of the year. It was massive.
Going around the city and, everyone was talking about it all, it was just a shock, a bad shock to everybody, like.
There was a tremendous outpouring from the city, from religious leaders, from community members. Everybody wanted to catch his killers. The city was united.
A lot of good people who wanted to see, people put away for it. It was shocked by it and appalled by it.
Before the investigation could begin, the family had the grim task of formally identifying Rhys's body.
Rhys was taken to the morgue. They wouldn't clean him up because obviously his body's a crime scene. It obviously got evidence on his body. He was put into the sort of like a room where we'd go and see him. The porter there to put him in like an Everton duvet, so that he looked like he was just like asleep. But the thing was, obviously he was still covered in blood, because obviously they've got to get the forensics from him.
The severity of the crime ensured that the murder had the highest priority for the Liverpool police force.
People from all over the force were drafted in. I just wanted to do my job so that Mel and Steve could get some justice, no more than that.
Dave Kelly was present at the autopsy.
They're never pleasant, but, an 11-year-old boy and his football kit. Horrible.
The cause of death was established as being from a gunshot wound, but there was more tissue damage than expected.
He had a small wound on the side of his neck and then a bigger wound on his back, which looked like the smaller wound was the entry and the bigger wound was the exit.
Because there were no bullets or shells recovered at the scene, the technician had to use the size of Rhys's wounds to assess the type of ammunition used.
We had a ballistics expert at the post-mortem, and he indicated that it was a .38 millimetre.
That information would normally help identify the murder weapon. At the investigation HQ, Dave's team began the crucial task of pulling together evidence.
One of the first things we did was we had to look at CCTV, not just at the pub, but the surrounding area and wider, to see what we could gather. The CCTV quality was poor. It basically took a picture every second or something like that. If you put them all together, it showed a moving picture. And you could see the killer standing astride his bike and then firing 3 shots. The first bullet, that's gone through the rear windows of a BMW. The second bullet hit Rhys. The third bullet hit an ornamental well outside the public house. And you could see smoke coming off the ornamental well.
The CCTV did not, however, show the face of the murderer.
In terms of identification, nothing. And we looked at enhancing the video with various agencies around the country and indeed around the world, but no, nothing.
But although the killer couldn't be identified from the CCTV, one name was constantly being mentioned to the investigating officers by the public.
The name that was coming through from the beginning was Sean Mercer.
Sean Mercer, a 16-year-old troublemaker who was already known to the police.
Sean Mercer was a local lad. He'd been stopped by the police numerous occasions. I thought he was part of a gang called the Crockstick Crew. He was thrown in the frame.
It was clear that he was pretty senior and people in the community were scared of him.
It raised the question of whether Rhys himself was involved with the gangs, but nothing could have been further from the truth.
It became very clear very quickly that he was not a gang member. That was never really the way it was presented. You know, the police were really good at getting that across, that, you know, he was a victim of crime.
But the police knew the challenge of getting gang members to talk.
It was obvious that Mercer was in a very tight-knit unit, and we needed to try and get into that, or to people on the periphery who may have heard something. And we tried various strategies for that, to no avail. There was no way around it because they were very tight-knit. Obviously aware of police, and no comment and the usual stuff.
Anybody familiar with omerta as a culture of silence within gang hierarchies coming from the mafia will know that that's actually quite an old culture, subculture within how gangs will behave, that they won't give up their own.
My expectation was that, you know, they'd have had someone, you know, within a couple of days. But again, I think that's, you know, the naivety of me and Mel is that, you know, not everyone's the same as us. You know, these people who are involved in the gangs, you know, think differently, act differently, got different priorities in life. Rhys is just a consequence of their activities, and, you know, they weren't particularly interested in the death of a little boy.
They've got to have the evidence. It's all very well having the hearsay that it's Sean Mercer, but without the evidence, it's just gossip and hearsay, even though everybody knows it's him.
Despite a lack of hard evidence, a few days after the murder, Dave Kelly arrested Mercer and other gang members anyway, in the hope that they'd talk.
I made the decision to arrest him and others, because there were quite a number of people arrested on this inquiry. No, we arrested him, interviewed him, and he's answered no comment to all the questions that were put to him. Arrogant, cocky.
The other gang members who were arrested also gave nothing away. Dave Kelly then took the opportunity to put Mercer into a video identity parade, or Viper.
There were a number of witnesses at the scene drinking outside because of the warm weather. So we were putting them up for a Viper, but nobody identified him. He was given bail while we continued our inquiries.
While Dave's team were trying to make headway, Rhys's family were trying to organise the funeral, and in the full glare of the world's media.
The coroner released his body so we could have a funeral on the 6th of September. We wanted a small funeral. We just wanted, you know, just a family service, but We just told he got no way, no chance.
The decision was made to hold the funeral in Liverpool Anglican Cathedral. Thousands attended.
The people had just lined the streets, the whole route. And then when you got to the cathedral, there was just thousands there, you know, in football colours, and, you know, which made it, for want of a better phrase, a great occasion, if you understand what I mean.
Who could not be moved by the sight of this tiny coffin in Everton colours being carried in?
I remember we got a big wreath made from the football team in the colours of the shape of the badge and the colours of the football team.
A really big privilege for, you know, a little boy to be have his service at the Anglican Cathedral as well.
With intense interest in the murder now coming from all over the world, Chief Investigating Officer Dave Kelly was under increasing pressure to find the killer.
Pressure from the Home Secretary, from the Prime Minister. You can't afford to mess up. You can't afford to make any mistake with the whole world watching you and everybody just wanting Rhys's killer to be found.
I had to forget about the furor that was going on outside and just focus on what we do for a living, the basics, which is what I did.
The family were asked to make an appeal.
It's obviously something that you've never done before. It's not something that you like doing. It's not something that you want to do. But you understand the reasons behind it, and you put all your reservations behind you and you know, get on with it.
And still the same name was coming up, Sean Mercer.
His name was out, and you see, Joe Public don't think about, you know, all the forensics, and then people were saying to me, what's going on?
People were that frustrated that they were daubing graffiti on walls saying that he was a killer.
Why don't you just go and get him? To me, it was as simple as that, go and get him.
No, we couldn't. Names get thrown in all the time on murder inquiries, the same ones all the time. But a name's one thing, evidence is another, so we need evidence.
But there was something the public didn't know. After the suspects had been arrested the first time, Dave Kelly had got authorization to plant listening devices in their homes, and it was starting to bear fruit.
We placed the probe in Yates' house. Yates was an older colleague, close associate of Mercer. And from that probe, we got some key information. We got Yates saying that it was his gun and that he'd give it to Mercer.
So the police had the information that Sean Mercer was given the murder weapon by another gang member, James Yates. Now they needed to locate that gun. Again, the listening devices came good.
The major breakthrough was where the firearm was stored. We executed the search warrant and we recovered some ammunition, the firearm, or what I believe was the firearm. It was a revolver, 6 bullets go in the chamber.
The gun was a 100-year-old World War I revolver, and it was found in the loft of another suspected gang member, a teenager who became known as Boy X.
The lad who was involved in that was away on holiday at the time in Florida.
The boy was arrested as soon as he touched down at Manchester Airport.
When we arrested him, faced jeopardy of being charged with possession of a firearm. We didn't know whether he was involved with the gang or anything about him. So we interviewed him. It was apparent he was quite distraught and upset and frightened. Seemed a genuine, decent lad. He said he was phoned by Sean Mercer, went up to our house, went into the house and was given a plastic bag, was told to take it back to his house and keep hold of it. He said he didn't know it was a gun.
Dave Kelly quickly realised if Boy X could be persuaded to talk, he could be the key to the investigation.
It became apparent to me that he would be more use to us as a witness. We gave him police bail, and then I looked at giving him immunity from prosecution through the CPS. And that was quite significant because we had a witness now saying that Mercer had that weapon, and others were involved as well.
Now Dave Kelly needed to link that firearm to the bullets that killed Rhys. But there was a problem. The ballistics analysis said the size of the bullet as determined during the autopsy was too small to have come from the revolver.
Because they were saying, that can't be the gun. It can't be the gun. And I said to you, listen, gentlemen, probably in a bit firmer fashion, but listen, gentlemen, you need to go away and look at this again, because I'm telling you now, that is the gun.
So the ballistics experts conducted more tests, firing the gun with the smaller bullets, and discovered that it did work, but the bullets did not fly straight.
And that is when they found that it was a so-called tumbling bullet, which is too small for the gun.
So when it came out, it was tumbling. So head over toe going forward, and then it's hit here. This bigger wound, we established was the entry wound, and the smaller wound was the exit.
And that would account for the large amount of tissue damage that Rhys suffered. 4 months on from the murder, while Dave and his team patiently gathered evidence, the killer, Sean Mercer, thought he was off the hook.
He's just walking around like there's no, you know, hasn't got a care in the world.
You know, he was kind of like king of the estate, you know, swaggering around with his acolytes, just being an absolute prat, really.
He's strutting around Croxteth, he's strutting around Liverpool. He must have felt that he got away with murder. Now, what that does for him is that makes him feel invincible. That gives him even greater status within the gang, and that makes him feel as if he should have that status. He should climb up the gang hierarchy.
He obviously thought he got away with it, but little did he know.
At the beginning of 2008, the investigation into the death of 11-year-old Rhys Jones had been underway for 5 months. Evidence was mounting, but the investigation team needed to be certain they'd get a conviction.
If Dave Kelly doesn't get this right, and he brings a charge without there being appropriate evidence, then Mercer's defense barrister is going to get this thrown out of court.
If we'd have just got the person that pulled the trigger, we'd have been happy. But Dave was insistent that he was going to, get as many people as he possibly could.
One thing that still hadn't been recovered during the investigation was the bike that the killer had been riding at the time of the shooting.
I released in the local press a photograph of the same type of bike, and asked for any relevant information to come forward. And it transpired that there was a guy who was up on the industrial estate, and he saw this bike discarded in some hedgerow. So he took it back to his home address and put it in the shed.
It was a distinctive silver mountain bike.
Anyway, he saw that, and he saw the press release, so he got in touch with us, so we got the bike back. We forensically examined that, and Mercer's fingerprints were on it. So again, that was another piece in the jigsaw.
It would turn out to be the final piece. The investigation team had sifted through hours of CCTV and covertly recorded suspects' conversations. They'd recovered the murder weapon, turned an accomplice into a witness, and found the bike used by the killer. Gathering all the evidence had taken 8 months, but now Dave Kelly was ready.
Once we had all that boxed off, I then decided that we should go and arrest everybody.
On the 15th and 16th of April 2008, Dave Kelly and his team arrested 17 people in connection with the murder of 11-year-old Rhys.
Dave came and informed us that obviously they'd arrested people, and he gave us the names, which meant absolutely nothing at all to us. There was a relief.
Sean Mercer was charged with murder. James Yates was charged with supplying the weapon. Others were charged with assisting the offender or perverting the course of justice.
When the arrests were made, it was massive. It's like you just hope then, it's going to lead to a prosecution, but it's like the first stage of this long process to justice for Rhys.
It was 6 agonizing months until the trial began. And when it started, the whole world was watching. Liverpool Crown Court was the focus of attention.
It was a big trial, yeah. We had to have 2 courts, one for the main trial and the annex for press.
We were asked to, on the first day, to go in the main entrance in order to give the media some photographs and some footage that they can use throughout the trial. And then after that, we went in through one of the back entrances.
It was the first time Mel and Steve Jones came face to face with the people accused of their son's murder.
We were sat literally about 10, 20 foot away from them. I think the thing, that struck both Mel and I was the fact that they were so young. Certainly Mercer and a couple of the others, they just looked so young to be involved in anything like that.
For Sean Mercer and his fellow gang members in the dock, their trademark aggression and bravado were on display.
From day one, the behaviour of all the defendants was disgraceful.
Sean and all the defendants were absolutely appallingly behaved and were very disrespectful towards the judge. They would try and stare us out in the press gallery. They were, they'd do anything to try and look tough and intimidatory.
Disgraceful, uncaring, no sympathy for any victims, there was just nothing. They just weren't interested at all.
The behaviour of the gang was in stark contrast to that of Rhys's parents.
They acted with great dignity right throughout. They never showed any emotions whatsoever in the courtroom.
Over the course of the next 8 weeks, the jury heard forensic evidence detailing how Sean Mercer went out that fateful day with a gun, intending to kill a member of a rival gang from nearby Norris Green. He fired 3 shots across the Fir Tree pub car park, one of which hit Rhys.
I remember very distinctly when they showed the CCTV of him being shot, and you could hear, it's a cliche, but you could hear a pin drop. It was so quiet, and that was a defining moment, really. The actual watching the moment this child is murdered.
Mercer fled from the scene and was taken by other gang members to a nearby industrial estate, where they helped him burn his clothes and douse himself in petrol to get rid of any signs of gunfire residue. They then convinced Boy X to hide the murder weapon. Mercer thought he'd got away with it.
It was very damning evidence, and I think you could see the demeanour change as they realised that it was. pretty watertight case against, you know, all of them.
All the evidence we had, circumstantial and factual, was very, very strong indeed.
After 10 weeks, the prosecution rested their case. The spotlight was now on the jury.
We were just full of trepidation as to which way it was going to go.
I did think to myself, what happens if they say not guilty?
We were taken to a jury room that wasn't being used at the time. You know, that we'd go and sit in and wait until they come back into court to, you know, give the verdict.
After deliberating for 3.5 days, the jury returned to the courtroom.
The judge came in, sat down, and we were all just sitting there waiting.
I mean, it's just so tense. This is a moment that they've been waiting for, and everything hangs on this.
You don't know, do you? You don't know which way it's going to go. You'd like to feel confident, but you know, you always have that nail in the back of your mind.
On the 15th of December 2008, Sean Mercer was found guilty of the murder of Rhys Jones.
Mel was euphoric. She really was. I know she hugged me.
We were relieved that we'd actually got a result. We'd got some sort of justice for Rhys.
Steve's a bit more introvert. He can hold himself in check more than Mel. Mel wore her heart on her sleeve, but it still didn't take away the fact that she lost her son.
All the defendants were found guilty. The accomplices received sentences ranging from 2 to 7 years.
The only sign of Sean Mercer's sort of demeanour cracking was when, you know, the verdicts were returned and he sort of pursed his lips and puffed out his cheeks.
Mercer received a life sentence and was jailed for a minimum of 22 years.
Which, considering he was a juvenile at the time, he committed the murder. It was pretty significant. I've been born and bred in Liverpool. I've got family, I've got 3 kids. So if I was taking someone off the street, I was doing something for Liverpool.
A dark chapter in the city's history was over, but it would never be over for the people affected by Rhys's death.
I live my life now thinking, if only they'd got him in the car. If only I wouldn't have had that training session that night. Everything was if only. And I know full well I couldn't have done anything about it.
I don't hold anything against Steve at all. You know, it's not his fault.
I always think I was responsible for them kids that night. Because they were 11-year-old kids. I'm the adult. It's my football team. I should have made sure everyone got there safe and got home safe.
Thing is, Steve, if you'd have finished 5 minutes early or if you'd have finished 5 minutes later, you know, it's just, you just can't go on with your what-ifs.
Rhys's killer is serving his sentence in a high-security jail.
I don't feel anything for Sean Mercer, nothing at all. I just think, I was a 16-year-old kid, done that.
I felt that Sean Mercer was a lost boy. That is really sad. You shouldn't be shooting people, you shouldn't be in a gang, you shouldn't be killing kids. That's the bottom line, really. It should not have happened.
You know, hating people takes up a lot of energy, eats up a lot of your life, and you don't enjoy, your life going around just continually hating someone. Well, forgiven.
Steve and Mel Jones have tried to take this terrible tragedy and make something positive. They've campaigned for youth services and created a lasting memorial to their son.
We did a lot of fundraising after we lost Rhys, and we built the little sports centre on the where Fairtree used to train. We're reminded every day of Rhys. We think about him every day. Some days are good days, some days are bad days. It can can be a mixture. Some days you'll be having a good day and just one little thing will set you off, or you could be having a bad day and some things may just bring a smile to your face.
From the 9-1, switch that over, that's the young blonde. I was at the West Coast, now I'm in the East Coast.